We are going to be in Mark 9 today, thank you, starting in verse 37. Whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me. Teacher, said John, we saw someone driving out demons in your name, and we told him to stop because he was not one of us. Do not stop him, Jesus said. For no one who does a miracle in my name can in the next moment say anything bad about me. For whoever is not against us is for us. Truly I tell you, anyone who gives you a cup of water in my name because you belong to the Messiah will certainly not lose their reward. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them if a large millstone were hung around their neck and they were thrown into the sea. You guys can go ahead and be seated. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, especially since it's All Ages Sunday, the kids that are not normally with us. We are very happy that you're in here today. And there is a kid in our story today. So we are picking up right where Pastor Aaron ended last week. And Aaron did a good job about talking about the kids in the passage and what it means to be childlike. And you know, it's a little bit difficult for us in our modern understanding in our day and age to understand what it was like to be a kid in Jesus's time. Today in America, we tend to make our kids kind of like the centerpiece of our world, for better or worse. We do that. We drive them to lessons and games and practices, and we kind of orient our lives around our kids a lot of the time. But that was not the way it was in Jesus's time. Kids were kind of powerless. Kids and women, for that matter, in Jesus's time really didn't have a lot of status. They were the lowest in society, and they were totally dependent on the adults around them. And so there are some ways that it is a little bit similar in our age. Talking to just the kids and the teens that are in the room for a moment, you know, you can't really vote. You're a little bit powerless in that way. So there are a lot of rules and regulations and things that affect you and affect your future, but you don't get a say in them yet because you're not 18 and you can't really vote. You don't really have a lot of money most of the time. You got to ask the grown-ups in your life for money. Sometimes you ask the grown-ups in your life for money all the time. Ask me how I know. And so you don't really have enough money. Maybe you get an allowance or money for chores or something, but you don't really have like money to buy a house or start a business or something that might bring you like power or status. You're kind of needy, guys. You're a little bit dependent. You know, the grown-ups in your life do everything for you. When you're little, they're changing your diapers and they're wiping your butts. And even as you get bigger, they're still kind of doing everything for you. And so kids are sometimes a little bit helpless. And so Jesus is really talking about kids, but people who don't have a lot of status, who don't have a lot of power in society. And Jesus actually identifies with the kid in this passage. You know, so he is there talking to his disciples and he picks up this child. The Greek seems to suggest that he's holding this kid kind of in the crook of his arm. So maybe it was a little kid, maybe it was a baby or like a toddler on his hip. We don't really know much about the kid, but he's picked this kid up and he's using him as an example. And he's actually saying when you welcome kids, when you welcome little ones like this, you're actually not just welcoming Jesus, but you're welcoming the one who sent Jesus. And so Pastor Aaron last week, he jumped over to Matthew 18, which is the parallel story. This same story is told in a couple of the Gospels, but in Matthew 18:5, it says, whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. So when you welcome a child, you're welcoming Jesus. So who do you spend a lot of time welcoming? You know, I love to have people at my house. I love to host. I love cooking for people. I love throwing parties. But mostly I'm just kind of inviting my friends. I'm inviting my family, the people I already know, the people I already love, the friends of my kids. I'm not regularly like going out of my way to just welcome people off the street. I'm not really being welcoming because I'm already welcoming the people that I already have a relationship with. I'm not really welcoming the people who can't really do much for me. In our modern day, in our modern times, we are very concerned with like status and power. We welcome people, but sometimes we welcome people because we know that maybe they could do something for us, or maybe they have like a little bit of status or a little bit of clout, and it would be good for us to build a relationship with that person. Maybe you want to be friends with somebody because you could see like elevating yourself by being friends with them. But Jesus here is talking about people like children who don't have a lot of power. Years ago, I was part of a launch team for a new church plant, and we were planting a church in a little town that was a suburb of a larger, really quickly growing city. And so there was a part in this town that for just generations and generations had experienced a lot of poverty. And so one night, the launch team for this church, the leadership rented a bus, and the launch team all got on the bus, and we took like a tour of this town. And we started in that really impoverished area. And the leaders spoke about, we are going to serve these people. We are going to partner with a ministry that does food distribution, and we're going to, do some fun things for the kids at Christmas, and like all really beautiful, good, needed Christ-like things. But it was all about how we could serve them. But I was really struck by what they said later, because when we left that area of town, we went to the area of town that was really up and coming. Like I said, it was part of a really quickly growing city. So there were a lot of new neighborhoods, a lot of cool restaurants, a lot of really wealthy areas being developed in this little town. And so when we got to those areas of town, the leadership said, now these are the people that we are going to invite to church. These are the people that we want to attend our church. And I don't think they meant to say it that way, but it was just so struck, like some people get like served and all of the things we are supposed to do in Jesus's name, but it stopped short of a full welcome. It stopped short of, we actually want you to be part of our church family. It stopped short of an invite. So how do you treat the people who can do nothing for you? Next week, Pastor Aaron is going to be joined by Dr. Freyu from Ethiopia. A lot of you maybe know Dr. Freyu or have heard him speak before. And Dr. Freyu runs a ministry in Ethiopia. And man, he does this. He does welcoming in an area of the world where children and women still kind of don't have a lot of dignity, don't have a lot of status. In some ways, it's kind of similar to Jesus's time. But Dr. Freyu next week is going to share a little bit about his experience working with women and giving them welcome and giving them dignity and giving them Jesus. Pastor Charles Spurgeon once told a story of a king, a farmer, and a nobleman. He said, once upon a time, there was a king who ruled over everything in a land. One day, there was a gardener who grew an enormous carrot. And he took it to his king and he said, my lord, this is the greatest carrot I've ever grown or ever will grow. Therefore, I want to present it to you as a token of my love and respect for you. The king was touched and he discerned the man's heart. So as he turned to go, the king said, wait, you are clearly a good steward of the earth. I want to give a plot of land to you freely as a gift so you can garden it all. The gardener was amazed and delighted and went home rejoicing. But there was a nobleman at the king's court who overheard all this, and he said, my, if that is what you get for a carrot, what if you gave the king something better? The next day, the nobleman came before the king, and he was leading a handsome black stallion. He bowed low, and he said, my lord, I breed horses, and this is the greatest horse I've ever bred or ever will. Therefore, I want to present it to you as a token of my love and respect for you. But the king discerned his heart and said, thank you, and took the horse and simply dismissed him. The nobleman was perplexed, so the king said, "Let me explain. That gardener was giving me the carrot, but you were giving yourself the horse." Sometimes we are like that nobleman in the story. We do nice things for other people because we're going to get something out of it, or it's going to make us look good, and we're not really doing it for the right reasons. I know we have a lot of kids and teens in here, so I want to talk specifically to you guys. What does this look like for you? How are you treating the kids at school? Are you maybe treating the popular kids differently? Are you only nice to the people that can help you? Are you nice to the kids that might invite you to their parties or help you be part of the right group or the right crowd? How do you treat the less popular kids? How do you treat the kids that can do nothing for you? Do you treat them differently? Now, in the middle of our story today, I find it kind of funny because Jesus is talking about the children. He's still got this kid in his arms, and the disciple John interrupts him, basically, and he asks this question. "Teacher," said John, "we saw someone driving out demons in your name, and we told him to stop because he was not one of us." "Do not stop him," Jesus said. "For no one who does a miracle in my name can in the next moment say anything bad about me. For whoever is not against us is for us. Truly, I tell you, anyone who gives you a cup of water in my name because you belong to the Messiah will certainly not lose their reward." One of the things I find interesting about that is it's almost like John is actually ignoring the kid. Like Jesus still has this kid in his arm, and John's like, yeah, that's fine. I actually want to ask you this question that I'm wondering about. And so who do we not see? Who is the person that Jesus is holding up to us saying, pay attention to this? And you're going, that's all well and good, but I actually have a question I need answered by you, Jesus. Who might we be ignoring that's right in front of us? And one of the things I really love about how Jesus responds to John is he talks about all of these powerful things that we can do in Jesus's name, like big things, like casting out demons, like that's a big thing. But he also talks about little things, like simple acts of kindness. He talks about giving a cup of cold water in Jesus's name. And so when we think about serving God, sometimes we focus too much on like these big projects and big plans that we want to do for him. But Jesus is also saying an act of power is just love and kindness and service, like the things that we might think of little things, especially concerned with who is in and who is out. Like he's kind of wanting to draw some lines here. He's like, wait a second, I'm a little confused. I've seen this person. He's doing things in Jesus's name, but he's not one of us. We're the in crowd. We're the insiders. He's not part of the group. So I want to see what Jesus says about this, because who's in and who's out? And Jesus basically says, if he's doing things in my name, let him go. If he's not against us, he's for us. So that's a good reminder to us that we are not the only ones doing God's work our way. And so don't keep people from God because of outward things. Maybe you're here today and you feel like you are not enough. Maybe you feel like you don't have enough to offer God because you're not doing like the big, flashy, impressive things. But those little things, those cups of cold water in Jesus's name, those simple acts of kindness, they matter. So let's always dignify people for whatever they're offering to Jesus, whether it's big or small. And so, especially for the kids in the room, little acts of service matter. Asking someone to play with you on the playground, to sit with you on the bus, asking how your friends are doing, asking how other people are doing maybe that aren't your friends. All of those things, they might seem small, but they matter. Little acts of kindness matter. And to show you how much they matter, I want to turn to Matthew 25, picking up in verse 31. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me.' Then the righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison or go to visit you?' The king will reply, 'Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me.'" And so when you welcome people and you love them and you serve them, when you feed them and you clothe them and you visit them, you are welcoming Jesus himself. And so how do you welcome the people who can do nothing for you? Are you welcoming them the way you would welcome our Savior? You know, Jesus knew what it was like to not experience welcome. John 1:11 says, Jesus came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. He knew what that felt like. But Romans 15:7 tells us, welcome one another, therefore, just as Christ has welcomed you for the glory of God. Because here's the thing, guys, we all know what it feels like to not be welcomed. We all know what it feels like to be the powerless and the low status, because that's kind of what our relationship with God is like. Jesus welcomed us even when we could do nothing for him. Despite our status, God loved us and God gave himself for us. And I know welcoming people is messy. Welcome is messy. People are messy. People have problems. This all sounds nice and easy. But sometimes when we welcome people, it like risks our status, because what would our friends think if they saw the kind of people we're welcoming? Or what are the people in my neighborhood going to think if they see who I'm having over for dinner? Or what are my good Christian friends going to think if they know that I'm hanging out with prisoners? But we want to make this a community of welcome. We want to make it a place where everyone is welcomed in Jesus' name. In just a moment, we are going to have baptisms. And at the 8 o'clock service, we heard a story from a guy named James who was going through a tough time. And he had a coworker who just simply said, "Have you prayed about it?" And it was such a small thing, but it led James to Jesus. And so what are the small welcomes that we can do? Welcoming people can be just that simple. Now, our passage also talks about not causing people to stumble. And so what does it mean to cause somebody to stumble? It suggests that we can do things that can cause irreversible damage to somebody's relationship with God. And so we don't want to put up unnecessary barriers to welcoming Jesus to God. You know, in our passage, Jesus wasn't concerned about the status of people who were doing things in his name. He just wanted them to, they're not against us, so they're for us. So what barriers are we putting up that might shame people who bring little things to God? Maybe we are making people feel less than. Maybe we look down on people who aren't as far along in their Christian walk as we are. So don't cause people to stumble. Just welcome them in Jesus' name. And so I really want to specifically challenge you this week. What can you do to welcome somebody in Jesus' name? What is the small act of kindness, the cup of cold water, the feeding, the clothing? What is some small act of welcome that you can do even this week? Maybe it's reaching out to that person that is a little bit messy. Maybe it's reaching out to those people that might risk your own reputation if you welcome them. But who can you love and serve this week in Jesus' name? So let's be a community that welcomes people to Jesus the way that we were once welcomed. So let's pray. God, we thank you that even when we were far from you, you welcomed us. And so God, help us to be a community that just welcomes people with small acts of love and kindness and service. Help us to be people who don't cause other people to stumble, who don't look down on them, but help us to be a place where your grace and your love is evident. God, I thank you so much for the stories of the people who are coming forward. We love you, God. Amen.
Hey there! Thanks for watching Living Word Community Church's YouTube channel. You can click to watch our most recent message and hit the